Welcome to another The Builders Extra, where we expand on a recent episode from the Builders podcast. We find some topic or something I want to expand on or think we could discuss some more, something we find interesting and maybe even educational. In this case, we are going to actually go back to the one we published this past Monday, episode number 77 with Christina Hooper. Now, Christina and I had an amazing conversation about her story and all the ups and downs and things that all us entrepreneurs go through to find our way to where we are today. But also within that, something we had discussed doing beforehand and did throughout was talk about how, or basically use her story as an example of how to tell a story as a guest on a podcast. Now, I would imagine for a lot of people, being a guest on a podcast is a little scary, especially if you haven't done much of it. But you know that it's a great way to get your brand out there, whether that's your personal brand, your brand. It's a great way to get in front of larger audiences or other audiences and stuff. So that's a good thing, but it takes some bravery, right, to get in front of others to talk. And depending on how much experience you have with video and all that, actually our next episode we talk a lot more about that and getting that confidence and how to do that. Atiba, check that one out coming up, episode 78. But going back to 77, so she has some great advice though. And as we went through the episode, there was definitely an example there how to do it right. The key here with her was she's adamant about the fact that her story is kind of boring, right? It's a pretty standard story. There's no exciting like aha moments or something, she was in the gutter, homeless and all this, and then this such and such ran into this person and or this situation, they came out of it and look at what they're doing now. It's not this like crazy situation or story. And that's actually probably the most common story, right? I mean, most of us are, have kind of a boring story when it comes to that. We were talking about how, like myself too, where it's like, why did we want to get into business for ourselves? And the fact of the matter is I'm not built to work for others. I'm okay working for others, but one of the things for me was kind of that financial component of this idea around not having a ceiling, not having a boss that's going to tell me how much I can make, kind of thing. That's why I got into sales initially. Then I went into entrepreneurship or building businesses. Same for her. She didn't want to be in a cubicle. But even though that story is kind of like, okay, she just worked for companies for a while, then she eventually on the side built this business, and then she's kind of been doing similar stuff over the years. And even through that, though, there's a way to tell a story that can still make it interesting, valuable to the audience. And now how you do that is kind of a structure. There's a structure around it. There's a framework you should use. You don't have to think about it too hard, but as you're telling your story, you give breathing room in between. That's kind of what I said on the podcast. Like, there's some breathing room, like take a breath, tell your story, kind of break it up into sections, right? And that gives the host an opportunity to interject as well, or dig into something further, talk or whatever. Gives you a break. You can have a drink of water, whatever. Just be relaxed. But what you do is when you tell your story, if you've told stories already, go back and listen to those stories. And like she had pointed out, look at common threads. Look at things that you can revisit or highlight that can be interesting. And you want to do it. So you want to give space to that. You want to kind of, as you're telling your story, you find something that is valuable to that audience. You got to be a little conscious of who your audience is. What is this podcast? What are they talking about? Right? What's the topic? What's the topics they're talking about? My podcasts a little broader in scope in terms of just building stuff, but others might be more narrow. Like one I'm going to be on soon is all about teams. So as you tell your story, you want to focus in on what you think that particular audience would be interested in. And then you take those moments and you expand on that. And you draw out the lessons. You talk with the host, hopefully can engage too and interject their own experiences or whatever. And that's kind of what you do. So we talk about, like it being relevant to the audience. You have key segments where you talk about something specific to your story. And you can kind of expand on, draw some lessons from that. And this may take some practice and stuff, or really thinking about your story, like what parts of that story could be valuable. Even though the story itself is kind of, vanilla, in there's always going to be lessons and things you can really, that others could relate to if they're in that situation or whatever, So you find those teachable moments. That's all I got for you today. Until next time, hope you found this useful, helpful, and all that good stuff.